Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name's Luke Payson. Welcome back to all those who are subscribed to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe now so you can see more of my next guest, Clayton Hoot Lee. Hoot. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
It's always great having you on the show. You're very busy. You're an undefeated 155 amateur MMA fighter with a record of 3-0. I did my best to give you the sense of the crowd, but you're not only a very entertaining undefeated fighter, but you also pack, you pack the house when you fight. And for those who haven't been there live, when you walk out, what's that like for you? It's that hoot, hoot, hoot. I was trying to do my best to sort of give you the flavor of that, but what is that like? Did you expect the crowd to get so into the hoot chants as you've been walking out, particularly in the last fight you had?
Yeah, I was expecting it. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot, like everybody from like Rockwood and all the Indio guys, they like it, and I just think it's a lot of fun. I expect it from those guys.
It is a lot of fun, and I think it starts with that core group of guys from Indio Dojo. And of course, you've been representing them, and Coach Vilfort is such an incredible BJJ, black belt, former MMA pro fighter, Bellator and UFC vet. I mean, just an incredible guy. But I think the crowd itself kind of gets into it as well because it's such a fun chant. Let's review. You've got a huge fight coming up, a title eliminator fight, which I think is really a great idea for the matchmaker, Jim Mooney, and the GM, Hunter Hammerstag, and the owner, Ryan Middleton of 247 Fighting Championship, to really build this up. Two great fighters. But before we get to Brawlenberg 19, which is happening at the Monroeville Convention Center, December 16th, let's back up. I didn't get a chance to have you on the podcast to talk about Brawlenberg 18, which just happened back in October. Talk to us about that fight. How'd you feel in there, and how did it all come together for the win to stay undefeated?
I felt really good, but the whole week I kept saying I wanted to do a jumping teep right away. Like as soon as I touched gloves, I wanted to do that jumping kick. And Coach Jeff was like, "Don't be doing that." And he's like, "Don't do that." And Coach Danilo was like, "Whatever you want, man." And he's like, "It's up to you." And I had no rest until they both agreed to let me do it. And as soon as I threw that jumping teep, he threw a nice straight punch, knocked me down, and that cleared the cobwebs. And then I was able to just focus more,
And
I had to get that out of my system.
It was only the second time we had actually talked at some point. It was only the second time I've ever seen in hundreds of amateur MMA fights at the novice level somebody being TKO'd by body shots or ground and pound, because the ground and pound is limited. Before we get to that finish, because it was an incredible finish, you used your rule set. You had a little bit of problems with the rule set, given the situation. So we'll talk about that. But how much of a relief is it to know that from now on you're going to be fighting where ground and pound is legal, because you'll be an advanced amateur? Now, it still won't allow elbows. Elbows are only legal at the pro level, both standing and on the ground. But you'll be allowed all types of punching, hammer fists and straight punching, hammer fist to the side, straight punching on the ground. So let's talk about that. How much of a relief is that? And then talk about the situation with Chip Snyder ended up having to take a point because of what ended up being a illegal strike, although obviously it was clear that you had no idea that was illegal. So let's talk about that a little bit, because that was kind of an interesting part of the fight.
So you want me to start with if I'm excited for the ground and pound?
Yeah, I guess so. I kind of layered my questions in there. Got to keep the old brain. Got to keep the old brain going.
I'm really excited for ground and pound. I think I'm going to get finishes a lot sooner. You know what I mean? Like if I was able to punch on the ground, even in my first fight with Dan, I think if I was able to ground and pound whenever I took him down the first time, I would be able to get him out of there, or just be able to get everybody out of there sooner. So I'm really excited to see how I'm able to finish fights on the ground. And then I was confused.
Well, before we get to the actual fight, you're mentioning Dan Walters, who's at 170. That was when you fought at 170 before you made the drop. He's a very, very talented guy. He's looking great in his amateur career. You picked up a decision loss to him, and obviously it's part of the learning process. And clearly the rule set does affect what you can do. So now we'll get to what actually happened. I believe this all happened in one round, so it was a very exciting, fast-paced one round, given your
Yeah.
situation. But what was your confusion? I understand it outside. I think I understand what was confusing you, but what was your confusion? What ended up happening that took the point away?
I thought that if your hands were off the mat, then I was allowed to punch him in the head. But I guess you still grounded, and I wasn't 100% sure. I should have asked in the rules meeting. That's my fault. And then Chip Snyder he did a good job explaining to me after. He did a really good job, and then he ended up taking a point from me, which is it's okay now.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. How concerned? I mean, you're dialed in. You're in the middle of a fight. You did an accidental illegal strike, but it's still an illegal strike. I personally
Yeah.
think Chip taking a point. We had that happen back in July to Ace. Man,
Mhm.
Ace Christner, and ended
Yeah.
up leading to a draw. And I think that's actually right. I think we see it at the pro UFC level where some guys, I'll call him out, John Jones, not that he knows who I am.
Yeah.
John Jones has been warned like over 100 times for eye pokes. It's literally part of his game plan. And
Yeah.
he's never had a point taken. So it's like, what's the point of a warning if you're not
Right.
willing to, if you're not willing to back it up? So I think Chip's actually right. When an illegal strike lands, the one that Ace Christner landed accidentally, well, intentionally, but didn't realize it was illegal, was a knee to the jaw, standing up, and obviously it was illegal. Oh no, he had it landed against him, so that took a point from his opponent. But getting back to you, it's a simple mistake to make. Your opponent was grounded because his knees were down. Where it got
Yeah.
confusing and still gets confusing is if you've got somebody, which you could, if you've got somebody pinned up against the cage and they're standing, but they're bent over at the waist, maybe you're on their back or whatever, and they have a hand down,
Yeah. Okay.
that is where that confusion happens. And so even in your advanced amateur rules that confirm this night of the fight with Chip Snyder, but even in your advanced amateur rule set, if you've got somebody up against the cage and they're kind of posting on the ground, but their knees are up off the ground, so they're standing, but with a hand down, that is still a grounded opponent. And in that case, if they pick their hand up, you can blast them. If they put their hand down, you've got to wait. The tricky part is if they're in that position up against the cage and they put a knee down, now it doesn't matter what happens to the hand. But as a fighter, sometimes we've seen this happen.
Yeah.
The fighter is focused on the hand and forgets about the knee. So ended up being a great fight. Okay, so you get a point taken. How bothered were you with that? It didn't seem like it affected you because you got to get dialed in, but how do you
Yeah.
process that?
It didn't bother me at all because I kind of figured that I had him because he kept trying to shoot and didn't really want to get up, so I figured I had him broke, and I knew that I knew I was gonna be able to get him out of there at that point. So it didn't. It was just a matter of time. I just made sure to not let it bother me.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a like an actual decision you have to make. It's just like
Yeah.
in football when a kicker misses a field goal, they have to choose to no longer think about it because
Yeah.
because it'll cause a bad pattern if they worry about it. So it's kind of like that. The other interesting thing is obviously we're going to talk through the finish here in a second, but even if you had dominated every round and gone to a decision, you could still get the win that way. Because if you're 10-9 every round, one round would be 9-9, but all the other rounds being 10-9, you'd end up still with a win. So even with a point being taken, it doesn't make winning impossible in any way. But obviously you stayed focused. How did you get the win, the stoppage on the ground, and how intentional were you to get that stoppage? Because it certainly looked like you were dialed in, like I am going to finish him with body strikes because of the rule set, which was just a genius way to go about
Yeah. Well, Danilo and Jeff told me before I go out there to just strike the whole time. Like I was like, because I was telling him like, oh, I was gonna shoot, take him down and probably try to submit him. And Danilo was like, why? He goes, show people that you can strike. And Jeff's a good striking coach, and they're telling me what to do. Well, then I took that to the next level, and I was only striking on the ground too, because I had his back, and I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. And then I turned around and like kicked him, and then I started beating him up again. But yeah, I just was told to strike the whole time, so that's what I just listened really good.
You do listen really well. Coach Danilo Billford had told me a long time ago one of the interviews that I did with him to talk about some of the fighters in India, he mentioned that your work ethic, your skill, all those things are great, and your talent, your physique. I mean, you do so much right. But one of the things he
Yeah.
said is he calls you the human joystick. Not quite as catchy of a nickname as Hoot, obviously, but the idea
Yeah.
that he and the other coaches can tell you to do stuff and you do it, which is what we would term coachable, right? That you're willing to take information in and do it, and that can be tough. So great work getting the stoppage. It was also a good stoppage to protect your opponent because I'm sure he was taking damage, and Chip Snyder did a good job of respecting a TKO, even though you couldn't hit to the head, because there's other ways
Yeah.
to get damaged even without getting hit to the head. And I believe your opponent kind of dropped an arm to protect, and at that point he realized that he was damaged. Now let's talk about this title eliminator, where you will be fully allowed ground and pound with punches to the head, or if you still want to pound on the body and kick the body, you certainly still can. It's not really a bad strategy because at the advanced amateur level, people are going to start to protect more, just like at the pro level. And it can be good. We've seen this at UFC where people will elbow or punch to the chest and body on the ground so the person will unprotect their head, because the head is obviously where you want to go. We've also seen people make the mistakes of just blasting only to the head on the ground and somebody cover up and really not take damage. And then they're like, I've gassed myself out. Well, you got to be a little bit creative. So what are your thoughts going in? And let's talk specifically about Timbo Slice. I did an interview with him yesterday. He said very complimentary things about you because you guys are both very talented. Obviously, he thinks he's going to get the win. It's going to be a very exciting fight. So what are your thoughts on him specifically and this upcoming huge title eliminator for Brawl in the Burg 19?
My thoughts on Timbo, he's very durable, and like he seems like he's in pretty good shape. Like it almost like he just doesn't get tired. He fights the whole time, and that's what I'm basically preparing for, is just to fight the whole time. And then my game plan, I don't even have a game plan. It's just to win every position of the fight, no matter where it goes. Because I know he goes for submissions, and he's a long guy. He's gonna be throwing up triangles and stuff like that. So I gotta watch out for that. And I just gotta come up with a game plan and stick to it.
I mean, I think this is what even 247, when they announced the fight, pointed out. I think it's a great compliment to both of you. All of your MMA fights combined, both Timbo's and yours, have all been within the 247 cage. And I think that's a beautiful thing. You guys are literally coming up through the ranks from a novice amateur to now advanced amateur, fighting for a title eliminator, which whoever wins will then, get a great title opportunity. It'll be your first time fighting 3-minute rounds. That's a big part as well. But I think it's great that now 3 or 4 years into 247, we're really able to see the talent level of people that have only fought within 247 cage. I think that really just enriches the experience, because I remember you fighting as an 0-0 fighter. I mean, that's the point, right? You start off 0-0, you build up your record. The next thing you know, you're raising up the ranks. So have you watched, it's on 247 Live. I know you weren't there in person because it was out in Cincinnati, but have you watched Timbo Slice's really unique inverted triangle, inverted leg triangle? Wasn't an arm triangle, it was a leg triangle, kind of from over the back of his opponent late in round 3. Have you seen that? You mentioned kind of how long and sort of sneaky your opponent can be as far as submissions go.
Yeah, I seen his fight. He did a really good job. That was a really good fight, and he found a way to find the finish. And then my job is just to make sure that that can't possibly happen,
Well, I think that's what's fun about both you guys being so talented. And we've seen this at every level. You want to do something that stays on your highlight reel, right? Like getting a finish like the one you just came out of. That's a highlight reel, at least for now, because it's an impressive finish. Timbo's obviously coming off a highlight reel finish because it was such a unique submission and a fight that he was obviously losing. It was a fight that he had lost 2 rounds, and he was able to pull out the win in the 3rd. I mean, that's impressive. But I think both of you are at the talent level where you both really want the other person to be on your highlight reel, and you don't want to be on their highlight reel. So to your point, your job is to do what's going to keep yourself safe. So really, really exciting. For you, and this is kind of cool, you've only been in the game, I think maybe 2 years. You training with Danilo. is this sort of where you expected, not only to be undefeated, because that's impressive enough, but to kind of be doing things that most amateurs don't do, like getting a finish in ground and pound, doing things that show a little bit of a spark that at the pro level or the advanced amateur level really gives people a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, I expect it. I mean, I have the best coach, I have the best teammates, I have all the support. Like everybody back home supports me. I'm always getting asked when my next fight is, and they're always wondering like if they can help out any way they can or whatever. And then just my teammates are good. We got Evan, we got Burrs, we got all the guys at Indio, the Chase girls, everything. So yeah, it's something like I wouldn't expect anything less, pretty much,
Well,
especially with all the support.
I think that expectation makes a lot of sense the way you train. It's been too long since we've seen Evan DeRucci in the cage. He's an absolute stud. I believe he's still fighting at 170 because at one point you guys were both at 170. I believe he's staying at 170. So that kind of rounds out your weight class as well in the gym and all of that. Just incredible. Hopefully he can get back in the cage soon. You mentioned support, and I know you mean like emotional support, people coming buying tickets. That's a big deal. Have you found sponsors? And if you have, please shout them out. And if you haven't, go ahead and make your case for people sponsoring you. I think you're a very sponsorable, that's not a word, but a very sponsorable fighter. So go ahead, let's talk sponsorships. If you have any, shout them out. If not, what is the quick reason why people should sponsor Hoot Lee?
So my sponsors are my Aunt Christy with Mountain View Kennels, the Smeek family with Smeek's Fantastic French Bulldogs. And then we got Ron English, another bulldog breeder. He sponsored me as well. We got my grandmother's dog grooming business. Her and my aunt sponsored me as well. If I'm forgetting anybody, sorry. Who else? I have so much support I can't even remember. I just sit. And then who else? I just can't. I'm drawing a blank here.
You got to start writing them down so that you have a
cue
card.
I'll have to look. Yeah. Whoever was on the back of my signature Hoot Lee shirts.
Oh.
Yeah. So, the shop, obviously, India was on there. And then Iron Mountain Fitness Center.
Well, Iron Mountain Fitness Center does not fit with your dog breeding, dog kenneling theme. I love how it's dog grooming, dog kenneling, 2 or 3 dog breeders, and then a fitness. So it all works out. But if you are a dog anyway related to dogs, you need to support. You need to support.
That's right.
If you breed them or groom them or maybe make little outfits for them, you do anything for dogs, get a hold of Hoot Lee. But that is really beautiful. You're young and you're at a point in your career where it really is about building for the future, both with the supporters and the sponsors. Tickets. I mean, you don't have any problem selling tickets, but I've got to always shout out tickets. Buy them from Hoot, buy them from India Dojo. It really makes a big difference, obviously, to you financially, but also the atmosphere makes such a big difference. I'm assuming you didn't watch the interview with Timbo, although it was all positive. But one thing he said, which I think I want to get your feedback from, is he obviously knows he's seen you fight live because you guys have fought in the same cards before. And he knows that Hoot army of Hoot, 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 and he expects it, obviously, to be heavily in your favor when he fights you December 16th. And he said that he thinks he can feed off them cheering for you to kind of like prove them wrong. What do you think about that as far as the atmosphere possibly being used by your opponent to kind of get some of his own energy? Because obviously it encourages you.
It'll be an even better fight then. If he's pumped up, I'll be ready to go. It'll be a good fight then.
That makes sense. I think that's a great attitude to have, right? I told him, and I'll tell you, one thing that's great when the crowd, no matter for what reason, when the crowd's in a fight, it makes the fight feel like it means more, because there have been fights where the crowd, just isn't really excited, which is a shame because there's great fights in the cage. But every once in a while you get a fight that the fight is great, the fight is entertaining, and the crowd's just like, and that's obviously doesn't happen for you and Timbo. So I think it really will suck the crowd in because of how entertaining and exciting everything will be. Really appreciate you. Hats off to everybody at Indio. We've talked about your coaches, your teammates. We haven't seen Ken Burrs in the cage in a while. Hopefully he gets something set back up. He's got a lot of talent and skill at either 185, maybe 170, whatever he ends up fighting at. Really great stuff. Thanks so much, Hoot Lee, for coming on the show. This is all about Brawl in the Berg 19, December 16th at Monroeville Convention Center. There is a chance tickets will sell out. That's what 247 is saying because of this man, Hoot Lee, and how many tickets you're going to be selling. So please get your tickets from Hoot or Indian Dojo now, early, to lock it in because we're under a month out. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
You got it. You take care.